Welcome everyone to the GP Contact Lens Case Grand Rounds. I'm Ed Bennett, professor at the University of Missouri St. Louis College of Optometry and executive director of the GP Lens Institute. It is important to note that I am a consultant to the Contact Lens Manufacturers Association. Well, what is the GP Lens Institute? The Contact Lens Manufacturers Association consists of the independent laboratories and button manufacturers who manufacture GP lenses as well as custom soft lenses. The CLMA and their trained consultants are invaluable resources in the design, fitting, and troubleshooting of GP and custom soft lens patients. The GP Lens Institute is the educational division of the CLMA and is responsible for the development of educational resources and programs. Well, first I'd like to say that it is important, as this young man can attest to, that you have many tools when you're working with GP lenses. One of the most important, if not best, resource is your laboratory consultant. They can provide diagnostic fitting sets and online resources for the fitting and troubleshooting of their designs, as well as provide you with good advice based upon their extensive experience. If possible, they would appreciate corneal lithographies and photos. A very valuable resource, we hope, to you is the GP Lens Institute, which is located at www.gpli.info. So let's take a quick journey through the website. As you can see, all the categories at the top give you all our resources and programs. I'm going to click on Education by Lens Type. And here you can see the different categories: bitoric, high astigmatism, corneal reshaping, keratoconus post-surgical, presbyopia and multifocal, scleral lenses, soft specialty lenses, and spherical GP lenses. And let's just look at a few of these. Let's start with the bitoric high astigmatism. We click that. You see all the tools that we have available for this. And we have quite a few. I'm going to scroll down so you can see that we have several webinars that are on high astigmatism, frequently asked questions, and we actually have no less than 3 empirical methods, including 2 calculators: the GPLI toric and spherical lens calculator, and the Mandel-Moore bitoric lens calculator. We also have Clark Newman's GP toric guide. If you go down to the Grand Rounds Troubleshooting Guide, which is our online book, we have no less than 7 cases devoted to different types of bitoric lens designs. So if we go back up to where we were, and let's go to education, and let's go to presbyopia. Now in this category, we have a large number of resources. You can see that we have no less than 5 webinars that have been devoted to multifocals as they pertain to GP and specially designed lenses. But I'm going to spend a minute on building your practice with GP bifocals and multifocals. This comprehensive program has no less than 17 different programs associated with it to help not only you, but your staff and your patients. Many of these are PowerPoints and videos, anywhere from how you set patient expectations to GP multifocal and bifocal fitting and evaluation, to a consumer brochure, to how to insert and remove GP contact lenses. But I'm especially proud of the professional fee calculator. When you bring this up, well, you can actually calculate the fees for any type of GP lens patient. So that's very impressive. So we'll sneak back to our website. And under education, let's take a look at, we'll take a look at spherical GP lenses. And again, a large number of resources, FAQs, webinars, and I'm going to go to one of our newer programs, Click and Fit. And what this is a virtual interactive fitting of spherical GP lenses. So let's take a quick
Welcome
tour
to the
this.
GP Lens Click and Fit. This fun and interactive program is designed to help you practice fitting GP lenses and interpreting fluorescein patterns. Using this tool is easy by simply following the screen instructions. Meet Abby. She's a 16-year-old female who's been wearing soft contact lenses full-time for 2 years. Now that she's preparing to get her driver's license, she finds that she isn't satisfied with her vision with soft contact lenses. Let's work through the fitting process to see if she can be successfully fit with GP lenses. Given this prescription and corneal measurements, and considering what we already know about Abby, which of the factors listed on the right side of the screen make her a good candidate for GP lenses? Check all that apply. You're correct. Abby's RX matches her with the rule corneal measurements, making her a good candidate for GP lenses. There are many fitting philosophies to determine the best fit for a GP lens. Laboratories often provide nomograms for their specific designs, or you can use a generic nomogram, such as the one presented here. Now it's time to click and fit. Given this prescription and K readings for Abby's right eye, choose a lens from the diagnostic set by simply clicking on the case lid or parameter specifications. This lens has a 41 diopter base curve radius, which is 1 diopter flatter than K. The diameter is 9.0 millimeters, the smallest diameter option in the diagnostic set. Click on the left menu to review more information about this lens.
So here you see the lens that actually is the flattest lens in the set. It has the flattest base curve and it has the smallest optical zone diameter. So if you wanted to look at what occurs with this fit, it will tell you and how to rectify it. And I can guarantee you when Abby comes back in a week, she's not going to be satisfied with the comfort of this particular lens design. So if we return to the diagnostic set, and let's go to the steepest lens in the set. This has the steepest base curve and the largest optical zone diameter.
This lens has a 43 diopter base curve and is 1 diopter steeper than the flattest K reading. The diameter, at 9.8 millimeters, is the largest diameter in the diagnostic set. Click on the left menu to review more information about this lens.
So once again, you can look and see what you would anticipate and how you would need to manage this fluorescein pattern in this patient. Now let's return to the diagnostic lens set and look at the best fitting lens in the set.
This lens has a 42 diopter base curve radius equal to the flattest K reading. The diameter is 9.4 millimeters and represents the middle diameter option in the diagnostic set. Click on the left menu to review more information about this lens.
And once again, you would find from this fitting relationship that Abby would be doing very well at the 1-week follow-up, and no lens changes would be necessary. So now let's return the diagnostic set, and let's click here to exit the program.
Before you exit, on this page you can view all of the fluorescein patterns in the diagnostic set. Simply click on the small green circle next to the lens parameters. Thank you for participating in the GP Lens Click and Fit.
So then, if we in fact go back to the home page, let's take a look at webinars. The GPLI actually has no less than 35 archived webinars on all topics pertaining to GPs and custom soft lenses. You can see all the ones from the past few years, but every month we have a webinar by very well-known experts in the field, members of the GPLI Advisory Board, and these webinars are archived and you can view them at any time. We look at our other resources. We have a laboratory consultant FAQ. This is a great resource when you know that your best resource is actually your laboratory consultant. So here you can see commonly asked questions about the benefits of your lab consultant, information you can provide to your laboratory consultant, resources they can provide, lens materials and treatments, how to manage surface wettability problems, lens design selection for high astigmatism, GP multifocal applications and troubleshooting, keratoconus management, scleral lens applications and resources, as well as corneal reshaping applications and resources. There is no question that a laboratory consultant has never heard and can't answer, and they will work with you closely to ensure the success of your patient. Other resources, we have a searchable lens database. So if you want to find a manufacturer, whichever one that you would prefer, or you can just put in a design that you're interested in, such as any of these, going from spherical designs to any possible specialty design, it will search and give you that information. It's like a Tyler's Quarterly for GP lenses. If we go back to resources, and also if you want to find a GP specialist, you're going to want to refer a patient to someone who fits GPs, we have several thousand practitioners in our database. We have a coding and billing module and the direction of well-known expert, and he's over here as our GPLI practitioner of the year 2015, Dr. Clark Newman. We have coding and billing FAQs. We have all the codes, the sample patient brochure that you can provide to them. We have 3 sample insurance letters of medical necessity, your top 10 errors in coding and billing, and 2 webinars, both presented by Dr. Newman, on how to code and bill the specialty contact lens patient. We have also GP product lists. If you want to know what materials are out there, what solutions are out there, what accessories are out there, you're just one click away on gpli.info. So that's our quick journey through our website, and we'll return to our program. The GP Lens Institute and the Contact Lens Manufacturers Association also have a consumer website, and it is entitled contactlenses.org, and it has all sorts of featured articles that can help your patients understand these designs better. So why GP lenses? Well, the quality of vision with GP lenses is typically very good. Studies by leading researchers have consistently found GP lenses to rarely cause any serious eye infections. The quality of vision obtained at all distances with GP multifocal lenses in particular is an obvious benefit. Of course, it has been found that myopia progression can be significantly controlled via corneal reshaping GP lens designs. And it has also been found that GP lenses, as a result of their custom nature, result in patients who are more likely to return to their prescribing eye care practitioner. And then there's the issue of profitability. Mark Ritson and his colleagues found several years ago that contact lenses increase profitability in a practice by no less than 60% versus simply offering spectacles as the sole eye care correction option. Furthermore, Gunning and Ames have found that GPs are more profitable than soft lenses as a result of the fact that GP patients are more likely to return to their practice. However, there is one potential limiting factor: initial comfort. But that does not have to be a problem. I recommend a 4-step approach to optimizing initial comfort with GP lenses. The first is presentation. Use a positive approach and use terms such as lens awareness and the lid interacting with the lens as preferable to terms such as discomfort. The application of a topical anesthetic immediately prior to the initial application of a GP lens has been found to result in a significantly better initial comfort with the patient and greater likelihood of success as compared to not using an anesthetic. Empirical fitting of GP lenses allows patients to experience the wow factor of good initial vision, which may, in turn, reduce the issue of lens awareness. And lens designs today, as a result of more sophisticated equipment, such as computer numerically controlled lathes, have resulted in consistent, high-quality, reproducible lenses, including ultra-thin and large diameter designs. Now here's an example of such a large diameter lens which is gaining popularity today, and that is the corneal scleral lens design, which is being worn for healthy eyes. So that brings us to our first case. This is a 13-year-old male, has never worn contact lenses, and his mother is concerned about his myopia progression. You can see his spectacle RX here, and also his corneal measurements, and you can tell that essentially he has no to very little residual astigmatism. So which lens fitting modality would you recommend? Well, I would think for a mother concerned about myopia progression, you can look certainly at corneal reshaping, and we'll talk about that in a little while. but if you're concerned also about vision, then GP spherical lenses are an option. So we'll talk about those two options. So designing a GP lens and designing this lens empirically, what is the first parameter to choose? That parameter is actually the overall diameter. For example, with a lid to cornea fitting relationship like we see over here, where that upper lid is overlapping the limbus, a lid attachment fitting relationship would be easy to obtain with this patient. However, for the patient on the right with a high upper lid, it would be better to strive for an interpalpebral fitting relationship. So with this individual here, you might go to a larger diameter like a 9/6. Here you might want to bring the lens edge away from the upper lid and go to something around the lines of a 9/0 diameter. But settle on one diameter for either philosophy, and that will be a starting point for your routine fits. But remember, if you're making changes in fit by altering the diameter, change that diameter by at least 0.3 millimeters to make any significant change in the fitting relationship. In selecting a base curve, you can select a curvature flatter than K to help you achieve that lid attachment fitting relationship. You can fit that lens slightly steeper than K to achieve an interpalpebral fit. When you make a base curve change to improve the fit, again, make it a significant change. Alter it by at least a half diopter for this to occur. Remember that base curve radius is just the starting point when you're fitting a patient. You want to find out if this lens, when it comes in, will fit well, and you can alter the lens after that. But an empirical fitting relationship will typically get you close to achieving your final fit, if not achieving the final fit on your first lens. But what about power? Well, lens power is dependent upon the base curve selection and how it relates to corneal curvature. Remember the rules of thumb. If you go steep, add minus. If you go flat, add plus, or as we like to call it, SAM-FAP. This all depends basically on two factors. The spherical refractive value at the corneal plane. So it must be vertexed if the spherical refractive value is at least 4 diopters, plus the correction for the tear layer power induced by the base curve. If you select a base curve radius flatter than the flat K reading, you add a corresponding amount of plus to the vertex spherical refractive value. And that's the FAP. Likewise, if you select a base curve radius steeper than the flat K reading, you add a corresponding amount of minus to the vertex spherical refractive value, and that's where SAM comes in. So let's design an initial diagnostic lens for this patient's right eye. You see the options on your left, you see the Spectacle RX, and you see the corneal measurements on the right. If you look at this patient, you know that you can select a lens that's in the 9/6 range because of where that upper lid is positioned. You can go with a 7/8 base curve, which is actually a 43 1/4. It's slightly flatter than K. Quite often the nomograms recommend that you select slightly flatter than K because the cornea is aspheric and flattens as it goes from center to periphery, so a slightly flatter than K base curve should result in a nice alignment fluorescein pattern. Well, what about lens material? That's always a very common question asked of the laboratory consultant. Today, we want to use fluorosulfone acrylate lens materials for their wettability as well as their oxygen permeability. It's also nice today that your laboratory either automatically matches a fluorosulfone acrylate lens material to a particular GP lens design, or they'll recommend a compatible material for the design that you recommend. Daily wear myopes, such as this patient, can often be successful with a low or 25 to 50 DK lens material, whereas hyperopes and extended wear patients should wear a high or hyper DK material. Although you're welcome to design the remainder of the lens yourself, this is often all you need to order a lens. Your CLMA member laboratory can provide standardized parameters to complete the data necessary for the optical zone, the peripheral curves, edge shape, center thickness, and the anterior control of power and lens mass. Here you see a variety of fluorescein patterns. You can tell on the left side if you go significantly flatter than K. that will result in apical bearing and very likely an unstable lens fit. If you go to bottom right, you're going significantly steeper than K. You have apical clearance here, but you also have seal-off in the paracentral mid-peripheral area, which may result in inadequate tear exchange. The perfect lens might be that one that's either slightly flatter than K or on K when you select the base curve radius for this patient. So let's ask the question, what changes would you employ in this case? And if you look at it, you see a couple of areas of concern. You see that there is no fluorescein peripherally. You have peripheral seal-off. You also see corneal desiccation staining here, which is likely because there's not tear exchange going in and out underneath the periphery of the lens. So actually, in this particular cases, you can use any of these changes will help. They will all bring that peripheral edge out. The one that's most commonly prescribed is going to a flatter peripheral curve. So what changes would you employ in this case? And as you can tell, we have excessive edge clearance. So you need to reduce edge clearance, and all four of these options will accomplish this, but a thinner lens, certainly, as you see in D, will reduce the lens mass, which may bring this inferior decentered lens up on the eye and create less possibility that it's being dislodged inferiorly. And also, you can, in fact, steepen the peripheral curve, which is B, to bring that edge closer to the eye, and again, help with that lid being able to raise that lens up. If you have a lens that decenters inferiorly, it compromises the blink, and as you can tell, a compromised blink will dry out the peripheral cornea, as you see here. Well, let's look at some fitting relationships. This is a lens that actually has a fairly thick center thickness. It's 0.19, and this is a -2 diopter myopic patient. So when this patient blinks, that lens drops down. Well, let's go to an ultra-thin design on this patient. Now you can see that that lens sits up nicely underneath the lid. You have lid attachment, less likely for this patient to experience discomfort, variable vision, and dryness. What about the edge? Here's a patient who's a 9 diopter myope without a plus lenticular, so the edge thickness is very thick, as you can see here. Well, that lens is dropping. Either it's being pushed by the upper lid because of the edge thickness, or the overall mass of the lens is great because, again, of the edge thickness. So let's order this lens with a plus lenticular, and you can tell this lens is going to stay underneath the upper lid and looks much better on the eye. What about the hyperope? This is a +2 patient, no lenticular, so you have a thick center of the lens, you have a very thin edge, and that edge just slips away from the upper lid and it drops inferiorly. Well, let's create a thicker edge by ordering this lens with a minus lenticular and see what happens. And there you go. You can see the lenticular. It's on the front surface of the lens itself, and you can tell this lens sits up very nicely on the eye. It's always important that when you make a lens design change, make it a significant one. Change the diameter or optical zone by at least 0.3 of a millimeter. Change the base curve by at least a half diopter. Change center thickness at least 0.03 of a millimeter. Change the peripheral curve radius by at least 1 millimeter. Change the peripheral curve width by at least 0.2 of a millimeter. And it's also important to remember that if you have a patient where you have a good fitting relationship, but for example they have a large pupil, so you want to increase the overall diameter, increase the optical zone diameter, you'll need to flatten the base curve radius accordingly for increasing the optical zone diameter, and vice versa if you want to decrease the diameter and the optical zone diameter. Then there's the issue also of the proper insertion removal of these lenses, and this does become important because we're in a situation where these lenses typically have lower edge clearance, they're larger diameter, so the application removal are very critical, as you'll see here. If you're going to insert, it has to be good lid retraction. You see that left hand coming over and getting the upper lid, and then the middle finger over the lower lashes, and that lens goes in very easily. Lid retraction is also important when we're considering lens removal. Again, you can bring the other hand up, get underneath the lashes, same hand gets lower lashes, you go laterally or go temporally, that lens can only go one place, that's out of the eye. Well, the other option for this young patient is, in fact, corneal reshaping. And that's a very exciting topic today, beginning with the research. And we always wanted to know why corneal reshaping tends to result in myopia control by as much as 50 to 60% of slowing down axial length growth. And Earl Smith, who's a leading researcher in myopia, first proposed that what corneal reshaping designs tend to do is, instead of having this hyperopic defocused peripheral image as we do with customary soft and GP contact lenses as well as with spectacles, which actually indicates a go sign for eye growth, if you can bring that image in and create a myopic defocus, that essentially is a stop sign for eye growth. And that's what we're finding not only in corneal reshaping designs, but also in some new and exciting custom soft designs. So who are good candidates for corneal reshaping? Individuals with moderate to low levels of myopia, less than or equal to 1.5 diopters of astigmatism, corneal eccentricity values of 0.5 and higher, corneal curvature values from 40 to 46 diopters, and corneal diameters greater than 11 millimeters. Poor candidates, moderate to high levels of myopia and or astigmatism, against the rule astigmatism of greater than 0.75 diopters, significant lenticular astigmatism, limbus to limbus corneal astigmatism, individuals with large pupils, typically up there at 6 millimeters or greater, and those with deep-set eyes can be problematic because of the need to use corneal topography with corneal reshaping patients. So there are numerous lens designs that are FDA approved, including no less than 11 designs with Bausch & Lomb's vision shaping treatment, as well as Paragon Vision Sciences' CRT system. There are 3 fitting methods that are successful, just empirically with central gaze and refraction, central gaze refraction and topography, and the use of a dispensing inventory set. Baseline topography is important and necessary to the success of corneal reshaping patients. You can then compare corneal changes pre and post-fit. This shows a good or optimal fitting relationship, and essentially it's a bullseye pattern where you have what appears to be a flat center fitting lens accompanied by paracentral pooling, mid-peripheral alignment or bearing, and then slight peripheral clearance, as you can see here. And this is, again, another good example of a proper optimum lens-to-cornea fitting relationship in corneal reshaping, also known as overnight orthokeratology. What you want to achieve is a bullseye corneal topography pattern. A bullseye topography map indicates that the treatment is progressing properly. The treatment zone is centered properly over the central cornea, and the area of flattening noted here, the blue area centrally, I can show it to you, right in there, is right over the pupil, so we're flattening the area that we want to flatten, and then you'll have paracentral steepening. If you have a smiley face, as you see here, that simply indicates that the treatment zone is decentered superiorly, and oftentimes it's a high-fitting lens, which typically is a flat-fitting lens. So the usual remedy for resolving this type of fitting problem is to increase the sagittal height of the lens, making the change recommended by the specific manufacturer. Conversely, if you have a frowny face, don't you love the technical terms? We will have steepening going on superiorly, so as you can tell, you have an inferior fitting lens. So here you need to decrease the sagittal height of the lens by the method recommended by the manufacturer, which should in fact solve this fitting problem. Finally, you can have a central island, and you can tell here that you actually have a slight amount of steepening centrally, it means you're really getting incomplete treatment. It is usually necessary to decrease the sagittal height of the lens to resolve this fitting problem, again by the method recommended by the manufacturer. So the follow-up schedule would include a visit the next morning so that you can evaluate the fit and then evaluate unaided vision, ocular health, refraction, and topography after lens removal. If everything is going well, then you can see them at 1 week for another morning visit, and then 1 month and 6 months later, and this can be in the afternoon without lens wear to make sure that their eye health and vision is as desired. You can also see them as if at 24 hours you don't feel you're getting complete treatment, you can see them 3 days later to see if you're getting treatment or if you need to reorder or refit. And it's also important when they do come back for their 1 month and 6 month visits to bring their lenses to ensure that in fact their lenses are clean and they do not need to be replaced. So how do you get started? Easy. First, get certified. You can do that online with the Bausch & Lomb Vision Shaping Treatment at www.bausch.com or the Paragon CRT Lens Design at www.paragonscrt.com. Use your CLMA laboratory consultants that are well trained to help guide you through these fits. And start with the easy fits. Begin with a few of the patients that might be in the -1 to -2 category, and you'll be very successful. Well, let's switch gears a little bit, and how about high corneal astigmatism and the role that GP bitorics play? And these lenses are indicated in greater than 2 diopters of corneal cylinder. The benefits of bitorics versus spherical or soft toric lenses in high astigmatism include better corneal alignment, optimum vision, especially versus soft torics, improved centration versus spherical GPs, and because of an optimum lens to cornea fitting relationship, you'll have less incidence of dryness and lens awareness among your patients. This just shows some fitting relationships, good and bad. If in fact you fit a spherical lens on a high astigmat, you can see on the upper left that you have horizontal bearing and excessive clearance vertically, which usually results in a decentered lens and certainly results in awareness. Down here again, excessive clearance, and what we are concerned about is those areas of bearing or applanation against the cornea. If you put that patient right into a spherical lens, you'll have an alignment that it should fit just like a spherical lens fits on a spherical or near spherical cornea. If you decide to go flat on a spherical lens on a high astigmat, again, you'll have an unhealthy central fit, and again, a lens that I guarantee you will move quite a bit on the eye. This is a slide from Tom Quinn that shows a spherical lens on a highly astigmatic cornea and how it decenters, how the lid interacts with the lens edge. If you put a toric lens on that same eye, you achieve much better centration. The ability of a bitoric lens to be successful is only as good as the willingness of the practitioner to fit them. This was a great study comparing GP bitorics versus soft toric lenses as performed by Dr. Langis Machad and his colleagues at the University of Montreal. As you can tell here, there were 20 subjects. They all had greater than 1.75 diopters of corneal cylinder. The average cylinder was negative 3.62 diopters. At baseline, it's important to note that there were only 2 patients in GP lenses when they were fit into the study. 10 were wearing soft torics, 7 were not wearing contact lenses. They were previous contact lens failures. 1 patient had already been ruled out. So each group were both modalities. One started in GP bitorics for a month, and then after a washout period went into soft torics. The other group started with soft torics and then went into GP bitorics. At the end of the study, 14 out of the 19 preferred the vision of the GP lenses. 11 of the 19 preferred to remain in GP lenses. So basically, if given the opportunity to try both modalities, it is likely they will be satisfied, if not very satisfied, with GP bitoric lenses. As we showed earlier, there are many different tools that you can access at gpli.info, including several different calculators and guides to help you come up with the base curves and powers and maybe even the rest of the design if you desire to do so. So we will do that. We'll start with the Mandel-Moore guide, and this calculator again is available online. We have this patient, as you can see here, a high myope, a high amount of cylinder, and those are the corneal measurements as well. So let's design lenses for this patient. There is a bitoric lens fit factor, and it is automatically calculated and inputted into this guide. What's important to note, if you look at most of these patients in this guide, the steep meridian is fit 0.75 diopters flatter than steep K, and the flat meridian is fit a quarter diopter flatter than flat K. Why is this different? Because the perfect patient to fit a spherical GP lens on is a patient who has a mild amount of corneal toricity, for example, a half or 3/4 diopter. We're creating that by using this particular fitting nomogram. So we'll input the refractive information, and we'll even show it on an optical cross on the eye. Until this is the steeper high minus meridian. This is the flatter lower minus meridian. This patient is obviously with the rule. That is inputted into the calculator by meridian, and that's the primary difference between a toric and a spherical design, is just simply that you have two different calculations. That's really the only difference, and these calculators show you how easy it is to design bitoric lenses. It will vertex adjust, so now you're at the corneal plane, and that is done so on your optical cross as well. So now the calculator will input the fit factor. So in the flatter horizontal meridian, it will input a quarter diopter fit factor, and basically that's a flat add plus. So we have minus 375 here. That will end up being converted to 350. We have a 7 1/4 here, and with a 0.75 diopter flat base curve, it will make that resulting power end up being minus 650. This is what's added together as we see down here. The final power, simply by adding from the calculator, ends up being 350 and 650. And with the flattening of both curves, the K value goes from 4250 to 42 1/4 with the fit factor, and the steep K goes from 46 to 45 1/4. So what about the other parameters? Well, simply providing base curve radii and powers in the laboratory will very likely result in success. However, if you are interested in custom designing the lens, here's one method of doing so. Your diameter would be the same as whatever you like in a spherical design, for example, 9.4. The material likewise would be the same as what you like in a spherical design. Center thickness, again, same as a spherical design, equal to the center thickness of the power in the most plus power meridian. If you want toric peripheral curves, and I would recommend those to have good alignment peripherally as well as centrally, just simply add 1 millimeter and 3 millimeters to your base curve radii. So in this case, a 7/9, your secondary curve is going to be 8/9, your peripheral curve is going to be 10/9 if you round it off. And in the steep meridian, that 7/4 becomes an 8/4 and a 10/4. So you have your toric peripheral curves. There is another calculator that you can use that we highly recommend, and that's the GPLI toric and spherical lens calculator, again, available on our website. So that this particular calculator can also calculate spherical lenses. The toric calculator was designed by Dr. Tom Quinn. When you input refraction and K values, it will design a spherical lens with less than or equal to 2 diopters of corneal cylinder. In patients that have greater than 2 diopters, it will recommend and design a toric lens. So let's see an example with this calculator, and this is a 3 diopter astigmatic patient. And what you can tell here is, in fact, you have the K values lined up on the eye, and what's really beneficial about this method is the graphics. You can see visually the lens, the eye, and the tear film, the corresponding powers of the refraction. And then what you can do is it will bring in, and I'll increase the volume, it will bring in the tear film, And in his method, he goes on K in the flat meridian, and he goes three quarters of diopter flatter in the steep meridian. So the tear film is minus 75, which means you need a plus 75 to correct for that. So that means a flatter base curve. It also means the resulting power is going to be 3/4 of diopter less minus, or minus 3 1/4. So there you have the base curves and powers that this calculator recommends. And you'll hear the clicking sound of the final design down here. The base curves and the back vertex powers. The difference in base curve radii are 2 1/4. The difference in lens powers are 2 1/4. And lo and behold, you have a spherical power effect design. And that means this lens can rotate all at once on the eye, and it will not affect vision. Well, let's take another example. In this example, you have 3 diopters of corneal cell, but only 175 of refractive cell. So we'll do the same thing. We've got the powers lined up and the corneal curvatures lined up on the eye. His calculator recommends a smaller diameter, 8.8. And that's just as a result of the diameter calculations seen on your upper right. So let's look at the base curves it recommends. Again, on K in the horizontal, 3 diopters flatter in the vertical. So here's a tear lens zips in. And again, you have minus 75 tear lens needing to be corrected by a plus 0.75 diopter compensation. So that means in the vertical meridian, you'll need a power of minus 75 to go along with the 45 1/4 base curve radius. So the difference in base curve radius is 2 1/4. Difference in powers is just a diopter. So since 2 1/4 obviously does not equal 1 diopter, you'll need what's called a cylinder power effect design. And this has some rotational precautions. If this lens rotates on the eye, then it can result in some blurriness of vision. But is there at least 2 diopters of toricity in the base curve? Yes. Is the base curve toricity at least 2/3 of the corneal toricity? Again, it is. Therefore, it's okay to order this particular design, and it should perform very well for that patient. Let's quickly look at a couple of clinical cases. Here's a 23-year-old law student desiring new spectacles as the vision is not great with his current glasses. He's been an 8-year GP lens wearer, spherical lenses, about 10 hours a day. You see his refraction, and you can tell right away that the right eye has much more cylinder refractively and corneal, refractive and corneal, than the left eye. So we're going to concentrate on that right eye. You could use an empirical method like Mando-Moore or even the GPLI toric and spherical calculator, but we're going to diagnostically fit this patient. Historically, we've used the Polycon SPE diagnostic sets of 2 or 3 or 4 diopters of toricity, and any of your CLMA member laboratory can provide you with a bitoric fitting set that simulates these parameters. So in this case, we're going to select a lens that's fit a little bit flatter than K, as you would do it with a spherical design. And the lens has powers of plano and -3. It's a bitoric diagnostic lens. Let's say the overrefraction is minus 175, and you should achieve a spherical overrefraction with this patient. All you have to do is add the overrefraction to the diagnostic lens powers. So you'll add 175 to plano, that gives you 175. You'll add 175 to -3, that gives you 475. It's as simple as that. What about lens material? Whatever material you prefer for patients like this. In this case, we went with a low decay fluorosilicone acrylate. What about center thickness? Well, it'd be equal to the spherical lens of the most plus power meridian, so probably about 0.16 millimeters. And keep in mind, this is really Torix 501. If you provide the base curve radii and powers to the lab, they can manufacture a very good bitoric lens for you. What about diameter? Again, if your favorite diameter is 9/6, that would likely work very well with this patient. What about peripheral curves? Again, you can add 1 millimeter and 3 millimeters to the base curve radius. So if the base curve radii are approximately 7.8 and 7.3, the secondary curves are going to be 8.8 and 8.3, and the peripheral curve radii are going to be 10.8 and 10.3. One more case. A 19-year-old male college student with symptoms of eye strain. He's been a spherical GP wearer times 4 years. There is his refraction. There is his keratometry values. Again, it's important to note that he is a 2-diopter refractive astigmat. He has 3 diopters of corneal cyl. One could fit this patient into a soft toric, since 2 diopters is certainly well within the realm of success with soft torics. But also keep in mind that he's been a spherical GP wearer, and also there's a very low spherical refractive value, so if a soft toric rotates on the eye, it could result in blurred vision. His GP lenses decenter inferiorly and create that dumbbell fluorescein pattern. So we'll select a bitoric diagnostic lens again. In this case, we'll select a lens that's slightly flatter than K. If we go back in time, and we'll do that, you can see his K values are 42 times 45. So we'll jump ahead again. So we'll select a lens slightly flatter than K. Again, a plano and -3 powers. Now the overrefraction ends up being spherical cylindrical, which you would expect because you predict residual astigmatism with this patient. Therefore, you receive an overrefraction of +1 -1 times 90, and that results in 20/20 vision. But how do you achieve the final lens powers? This is where optical crosses would be wonderful to do, but keep in mind all you do is you add the overrefraction in a meridian to the diagnostic lens power in that same meridian. This is a width rule patient, so there's plano power in the 180, there's -3 power in the 90. So what is the overrefraction in the 180? Well, it's going to be plano. It's going to be +1 adding with -1. You're going to have plano in the 180 meridian added to plano ends up being plano. In the 90, you're going to have -3, and then of course your overrefraction is +1 in the 90, so you add those two together and you have -2. You simply add the overrefraction in a meridian to the diagnostic lens power in that same meridian. So there you have bitorics. So let's finish with the wonderful world of presbyopia. One day print looks wonderful, the next day you wake up and print looks like this. Having been presbyopic for a long time, I can remember when it seemed like it happened overnight, even though all our accommodation rules and books tell us that that actually isn't the case. Regardless, it absolutely is not enjoyable. But the good news is we have some outstanding options to fit the presbyope. When we look at GP lens alternatives, here are 3 such alternatives, starting with single vision accompanied by reading glasses. And of course, with these individuals, they don't often like to take glasses on and off, and there are people out there like this distinguished gentleman who really just don't want to wear glasses, as he'll communicate. I hate glasses. So there you have it. And then there's monovision. And certainly monovision is a tool that we should use, even though research is showing us that patients tend to prefer multifocals by a 3-to-1 margin versus monovision. Here's a study that was performed at the University of Missouri, St. Louis on the vision performance of subjects wearing different types of presbyopic contact lenses, and particularly looking at the quality of vision with these different options. There were 32 subjects. 8 subjects wore GP monovision lenses, 8 wore a soft bifocal lens, 8 were wearing aspheric GP multifocals, and 8 were wearing progressive addition lens spectacles. Low and high contrast acuities were assessed, contrast sensitivity was assessed, glare sensitivity was assessed on all these subjects in this study, and we'll just show a few of the results. In high and low contrast acuity, you can tell that it was comparable in both of these between GP multifocals and progressive addition lenses. Next were the soft bifocals, and the least performing modality was monovision. This was likewise true with contrast sensitivity function, where the high bars indicate better contrast function. You can again see progressive addition lenses and GP multifocals. Next will be soft multifocals, and the final and lowest one is, in fact, monovision. So the conclusion of this study was, for the three contact lens modalities, GP wearers exhibited the highest contrast sensitivity at all frequencies, best high and low contrast acuity, and least disability glare. Soft bifocals were second, monovision last in all categories. Well, what about GP use today? It can easily be argued that our greatest opportunity for practice building is the contact lens correction of the presbyope. Certainly it should be a lot more today than it is. Often patients are told one of the following when asked about multifocal contact lenses, and I know that because I answer all the inquiries from patients in the www.contactlenses.org, and the most common one pertains to, can I wear multifocal lenses? They will indicate that their practitioner told them either there's no such thing, they don't work, or on occasion they'll go, of course, and then fit them in the monovision. So this does, in fact, represent a tremendous opportunity, again, not just simply limited to GPs, but soft multifocals as well. So this is obviously a concern to me, as you can tell. So what do we do? Well, it is true. They are right. Contact lens multifocals do not work until you fit them. A great study by Jones in the Journal of the British Contact Lens Association in 1996 showed that they took 160 non-contact lens wearers coming into their office and randomly placed them into two different groups. One group, called the reactive group, nobody mentioned contact lenses to them when they were in the office. The staff didn't, the doctor didn't, and the only way they were fitting the contact lenses is if they mentioned it to the doctor. The others were the proactive group, where both the staff member and the doctor would mention that contact lenses are fit and encouraged in this practice. So, as you can tell, only 9 out of 80 were fit in the contact lenses in the reactive group. 46 out of 80 in the proactive group were fit in the contact lenses, and knowing how profitable contact lenses are to a practice, that's enormous. And this included 21 out of 33 presbyopes. So you can build your practice on the contact lens fitting of the presbyope. When's the best time to tell a patient about bifocal or multifocal GPs? Before they become presbyopic. It's a great time to say that this will be occurring in the next few years, but we have lens designs that will, in fact, restore your near vision and improve the quality of your life. Well, I think it's simply a matter of threes. Multifocal fitting, just like fitting a bitoric, is not complicated. You really only need approximately 3 in each of these categories. When the GP Lens Advisory Board, which is a group of 70 prominent GP fitters in the country, were surveyed about how many fits did it take for them to feel comfortable fitting a given GP multifocal, the most common answer was 3 patients. And the same can be attributed to these other categories, as I'll show. Of course, the first thing I will do is give you 5 options when it comes to assessing motivation and goals. But I think if you look at these factors, these are the key ingredients when you're talking to any presbyope about contact lens multifocals. Be sure to present all options to them. I always emphasize the contact lens multifocal option. If they opt for soft multifocals, that's certainly acceptable. If ultimately they are not pleased with their vision from this correction, however, they've been told that GP should be a viable option, and it makes it easier to then refit them into that modality. Of course, I love to tell patients that this correction is necessary, not because they are aging. I never use the aging word, but because of their chronological maturity. I also tell patients that these are dynamic pieces of plastic that move on the eye with the blink, and that in many cases, multiple corrections are in front of the eye at the same time. So their expectations, therefore, are not too high. It's the same reason that we don't guarantee the patient that they will not need over spectacles. There are occasionally a patient who desires them for reading fine reading detail, very small print, or perhaps to help with night driving. Although really the great majority of patients do not require over glasses. But this is essentially just like the restaurant that tells you there's a 20-minute wait and you are seated in 15 minutes. Our goal is always to underpromise and overdeliver. Is the motivation simply not to wear glasses? That's a tremendous motivator. And that's definitely a great success rate for patients who have been single vision contact lens wearers. As a GP multifocal wearer myself, I love going into a restaurant and having dinner with my friends, and all of whom are wearing glasses, and simultaneously ordering dinner off the menu, and then looking at the expression on their face, which seems to say, gray hair. Ed has to be one of us. These are also the individuals who really have, in some cases, are very critical about their vision. And those patients, you may simply have to say you cannot guarantee that their vision will be identical to that achieved with glasses, and let them make the decision as to whether to proceed or not. And fortunately, there's very few people in that category. And then finally, find out what distance is most important to them, and have them rank the importance of their visual tasks, which typically include distance vision, computer vision, ability to read fine print, as well as their ability to read their smartphone. Your goal is to meet their primary visual needs. So essentially what you have, in fact, is the sandwich approach. You are giving them the benefit of visual freedom, but then you can state the possible compromises, including the likelihood that a lens change or two might be necessary, which may result in as long as 6 to 8 weeks to achieve the ultimate goal, while also preventing the patient from returning the next Monday morning dissatisfied with their vision, and then culminating with the other positive half of the sandwich. If you are patient motivated, we have about an 80% success rate, and that is fairly typical with GP multifocals. There are many different types of GP presbyopic options. Two very popular ones are aspheric multifocals and segmented translating designs. The aspheric multifocals typically represent a center distance design that gradually increases in plus as you go away from the center. This is similar to progressive spectacles. There's often a high eccentricity value to generate more plus power as you get away from the center. These are very user-friendly. You can almost always order these empirical, just submit K's or corneal topography readings as well as refraction and add to the laboratory, and you'll receive lenses that either result in first fit success or get you very close. They also use the simultaneous vision principle and the fact that there will be several powers in front of the eye at the same time. And then there's segmented translating designs, and you see a bifocal here on the right, but many of the designs today are in trifocal form. These are prism ballasted and occasionally truncated. They oftentimes have, as you see here, a crescent, or they can have an executive shaped seg. With these designs, when the patient looks down, the near image right here will move up in front of the pupil. So this design typically rests on or near the lower lid. So here's case 3. This is a 47-year-old teacher who has worn soft lenses for monovision, but simply not satisfied with the vision. She doesn't want to wear glasses over her contact lenses. You see the refractive information. This patient's myopic, relatively low AD. The corneal cylinder, as you see here, is essentially equal to the refractive cell. So this is a good GP patient. When we look at her right now, we see a lower lid that's relatively low. It's about 1 millimeter below the limbus, which typically is not a good patient for a translating design. The pupil diameter is fairly average, around 4 millimeters. If this patient had up around 6 millimeters or greater, they would not be an aspheric multifocal candidate. But right now, based on the information that we have, the simultaneous vision design would be the best design for this patient. So one of the factors in the decision-making process is simply, where is that lower lid? So if you see the lower lid at the limbus, you can really go with any design. But if you look at all three of these images, an aspheric will work in all three. If you have a low lower lid, a segmented translating is usually not successful. If you have a real high lower lid, it may raise that seg well into the pupil. So you have a viable option with an aspheric multifocal regardless of lid position. So what changes would you employ in this case? Well, what you see here is a lens that's dropping. And that really is a patient who's not going to be happy with their vision. When they blink, they pick it up, but then it falls down. So when you have that type of patient, the best option is to go to a steeper base curve. Just simply increase the sagittal depth and try to keep that lens positioned well-centered and not moving very much on the eye. Well, what about in this case? Well, actually, this is a good fit. That lens is centered over the pupil fairly well. It's not moving very much. You'd prefer to only have about 1 millimeter of movement. And these designs, the way they are on the back surface, oftentimes you do achieve that. So the correct answer would be D, no change. Of course, dryness is a great challenge as one reaches presbyopia. Therefore, the problem of poor surface wettability, which you see here, is not uncommon. And really, all four of these approaches could be beneficial. Adding an extra strength cleaner, such as Pro-Gent, the Boston extra strength cleaner, or an isopropyl alcohol-based cleaner, such as Miraflow, may clear up this problem. If the lens is not plasma treated, switching to a new lens that's reordered with plasma treatment may in fact result in better wettability. So staying with the rule of threes and troubleshooting the aspheric multifocal, if the lens is moving too much, just go with a steeper base curve. I'd steepen the base curve by a good half diopter. If there's peripheral seal off, that may require either to flatten the peripheral curve or more likely flatten the base curve. If you don't have sufficient add power, and the designs today typically have multiple adds, and some of the newer designs are really exciting with the success that they're achieving in high add patients. So typically a higher add design will succeed with these individuals. But worst case scenario, you can simply overplus the non-dominant eye slightly in a modified multifocal and you'll have success at near with that individual. Finally, let's talk about translating vision. And the best candidates for these individuals are those people who really don't want any interruption in their vision. They want uninterrupted vision. They have critical vision demands at near and or at distance. Any add powers are available, which makes it certainly a beneficial design. You want the lower lid, as mentioned before, to be near the limbus, not to have really flaccid lids, so that there'll be a lower lid to allow the lens to translate. If an aspheric lens is not successful, and certainly in cases where the corneal apex is inferior, which means an aspheric lens would probably decenter in that case, a translating design would be great. With translating designs, it's preferred to use a diagnostic set. There are a few designs out there that you can fit empirically if you provide sufficient information, but typically you'll want a diagnostic set. And staying with the rule of threes in terms of fitting, you want to look at the position of the lower lid to limbus. That's important to determine that this is a good patient for this design, and perhaps if you'll need to go a little bigger or a little smaller. You'll want the seg line to be approximately at the lower pupil. And then you'll want the patient to look down so you can evaluate translation in down gaze, and we'll look at that. Lower lid position again. This is good. This is still fine. It's a little bit high, but that typically will result in success. This is borderline low. You're getting close to that 1 millimeter below the lower limbus where these lenses will not get into a position where they will translate when the patient looks down. And speaking of translation, here you see a good fit. This is a bifocal lens. Typically the trifocal designs will have the trifocal portion right into the lower pupil margin. This is a bifocal lens. The line is right at the lower pupil margin. And then we'll watch this lens. The patient looks down, you lift up the upper lid, and that lens should in fact translate, which means it gets pushed up. So now the patient is in fact viewing to the near part as they're reading. So let's go to our final case. This is a 54-year-old office manager, has tried soft lenses but finds that they feel dry. The previous doctor this patient had does not fit gas permeables, but yet her co-worker wears gas permeable multifocals and is quite happy with them. So this patient is hyperopic, as you can tell, a moderate ad. You look at the corneal cylinder, it matches up well with the refractive cylinder, so again a GP lens should be fine. You're looking at the pupil diameter, which looks relatively large. That may make aspheric designs not an optimum option, but you have a good lid to cornea relationship. So if we go on, again, you see the pupil is in fact borderline in terms of its size for an aspheric design. So what type of GP design would be best suited for this patient? Very likely a prism ballasted translating design. So let's go into the troubleshooting of these designs, and as you can tell here, this lens is being pulled up into the pupil, and keep in mind you want these lenses to only move about 1 millimeter when they blink. So when this occurs, you should in fact increase the prism ballast, again usually by about a half diopter, to hopefully keep that lens down so it is not raised very much with the blink. Now in this case we have a situation where as the patient blinks, the lens starts rotating. And as I like to say, this is a perfect lens for patients who only want to look to the right. But seriously, in this type of patient, when the lens rotates excessively, oftentimes this is a lens that's fit a little bit too steep. And most translating designs are fit encave or slightly flat because you want those lenses to fall and sit on the lower lid. You don't want them to try to center as a steep lens will do. So if you see a lens rotating such as this, I would go to a flatter base curve to help rectify the problem. So the rule of threes in problem solving these patients, well, if there's excessive rotation, flatten the base curve radius. Secondarily, you could increase the prism. If the lens is picked up too high with the blink, increase the prism. The secondary option would be to flatten the base curve. A third problem would be, what if the lens doesn't translate, or it only translates intermittently? This could be a flaccid lower lid, which means no change will help, and you need to go to an aspheric design. But the first step would be to try to bring that edge out a little bit so it stays out onto the lid margin. So flattening the base curve, or secondary flattening the peripheral curve radius, will bring the edge out onto that lower lid. Another possibility would be to increase the thickness of the edge, which you can accomplish by increasing the prism and or truncation of the design. Well, there are a few issues and controversies as they pertain to GP multifocals. Those individuals out there that say, well, they're just not successful. Well, there's numerous studies to back up that GP multifocals have anywhere from 70 to well over 80% success when fit. And with 107 different multifocal designs and 55 segmented translating designs, 12 with intermediate correction from 56 laboratories, they have to be successful. And how about those individuals that say, well, they're uncomfortable? Actually, there's been research to find that both aspheric and segmented translating designs are more initially comfortable than spherical GPs. The reason for this? They move less on the eye than spherical designs. You can fit many of these designs empirically. So when their first experience with the lenses are lenses they can see with, and that oftentimes tends to minimize their perceptions about awareness. And finally, you can always use a topical anesthetic right before the initial application of multifocal lenses to increase the initial success and comfort with these lenses. So in summary, building your GP contact lens practice will result in enthusiastic patients, tremendous personal satisfaction, and practice growth. I sincerely hope this webinar has been beneficial in your GP lens education. And on behalf of the Contact Lens Manufacturers Association, we would like to thank you for viewing this program.